I want to just tell you a little bit about this Greenwood massacre that you heard, the Greenwood area that you heard Morgan refer to, and the massacre that we've talked about. It was 1921. It was in March of 1921. I'm sorry, in May of 1931, when a mob of white Tulsa residents, many deputized by city officials, attacked the black neighborhood in Tulsa known as Greenwood. They destroyed homes. They killed over 300 residents, and they left nearly 10,000 African Americans homeless. 35 blocks of the area were destroyed. National Guard was brought in to stop the violence, and survivors and eyewitnesses say they recounted the bodies of those killed thrown into mass graves into the Arkansas River. There are now excavations underway to find some of those mass graves. Like many American cities, there's a stark contrast between the white and the black sections of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Things like life expectancy being lower, unemployment being higher on the black side of town. Influential Oklahoma lawmakers are speaking out about this.
We got here through systemic racism, and that's why I'm glad the conversation that we're starting to have across the country is not just on law enforcement reform, but it's how do we close the achievement gap in schools, right? How do we invest in black-owned businesses? How do we create homeowners in the black communities? Because that's what was really stolen here at Greenwood, right? We burned down businesses, we burned down homes, really burned down opportunity. So really what has to happen next is that we consider how do we dismantle systemic racism and how do we build Greenwood districts all across the country.
Joining me now is Minority Caucus Vice Chair of the Oklahoma State Legislature, Democrat Monroe Nichols. His district includes parts of Tulsa. He's also a commissioner on the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission. Councilor Nichols, thank you for joining me. Commissioner Nichols, let me ask you about what I was just talking about Greenwood, because you mentioned that in your conversation with Cal Perry yesterday. This is hardly something that was taught to people in Oklahoma in public schools, in white schools, let alone the rest of the country. When Mike Bloomberg ran and named his initiative for African Americans the Greenwood Initiative, most people had no idea. Certainly white people had no idea what he was talking about. And unless you understand the history of Greenwood and Black Wall Street, you can't fix the situation we're in today.
That's absolutely true, and it's great to be on with you this morning. You know, yesterday I talked about the issues around black-owned businesses and homes and what was built in Greenwood and how that was really taken away through systemic racism. And when Mike came in and talked about it, it elevated that issue. And you're right. Until recently, with the work of a lot of legislators and a lot of folks in the community, the race massacre wasn't talked about in schools. But now that we know, I think is what's really important for us to consider. Now that we know what happened here, now that we know what was taken away from the community here, I think it's now our obligation to apply that in how we think about how we rebuild communities all across this country, right? So I think the knowing is great, but the doing is what's even more important.
The connection, though, is important, and you make it through systemic racism, because the Tulsa massacre, to a lot of people, to a lot of white Americans or immigrants who weren't here, they say the same thing as they say about slavery. I didn't do it. I didn't have any slaves. I didn't massacre anybody. I wasn't part of the Tulsa massacre. My family's not from Oklahoma. They're not from the South. How do we start to understand systemic racism as something that benefits everybody who's not subject to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that folks really have to stretch themselves. They may not understand it, but whether you think it or not, you could be and may be a beneficiary of systemic racism, not because of intentionality on your part, right? Not because you yourself did something, but it's the privilege that you enjoy. And frankly, even in 2020, the privilege you enjoy because of the color of your skin. You know, Allie, if I can share with you a story yesterday, I had a friend, she was in one of the shops, took her daughter, who I think is a kindergarten in, and she didn't understand, this kindergarten didn't understand what I can't breathe meant, right? And her mom kind of explained, well, this is what it's about, right? This is because the killing of unarmed black men and that kind of stuff. And so this kindergartner said, man, I hope they don't start doing that to white people, right? And so I think that's what her reaction to that is it was very telling, right? And I think that's the struggle that folks don't understand. You may not have done anything, but you also don't have to worry about the same things. You talked about the life expectancy gap that we have across the country. There's a reason that gap exists, right? You talked about the wealth gap. Black wealth is 10% that of white wealth in this country, and it's not because black folks are any less capable or lazy or anything like that. It's because we have structures in place that have kept it that way, and it's really our obligation to dismantle those structures.
You, Representative Nichols, have done work to try and advance these causes. How do you have that conversation? You just said it to me. People hear that they've got privilege, and they think you're accusing them of having intentionality, of being racist. And that's not the case. The idea that not being anti-racist isn't enough doesn't mean you're bad. Doesn't mean that you are deliberately contributing to it, but you are inadvertently benefiting from it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think one of the positive things of where we are as a country right now, I've had more people reach out to me, my white colleagues in the legislature, friends that I hadn't talked to in a while, parents from my son's school, and they're starting to better understand what that privilege looks like. And so that's what makes what's happening right now in the country feel a lot different than what we've seen in the past. This is why this is not a moment. It's really becoming a movement, because it's not just about equality and this vague idea of equality, but it's really about everybody looking inside them. And a lot of white men who've reached out to me and said, you know what, I didn't understand privilege until now. What can I do about it? You hear a lot of folks talking about it. And maybe it's time for us to listen and not talk. There's a foundation in Tulsa that has invested, I think, $6 million into the community, and have put a board of African Americans, solely African Americans, to decide how that money is going to be spent. And so, the power dynamics are starting to shift. I think people are really starting to understand privilege and white fragility, and I think we'll be better for it as a country. But we still have a lot of work to do. So we're at the starting line, but hopefully the finish line looks like a better country for everybody.
I hope so, too. State Representative Monroe Nichols from Oklahoma is also a commissioner on the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission. Worth noting, Representative Nichols' father was a Houston police officer, and his uncle is a Dallas police officer. So you bring a lot of personal experience to this. Thank you for joining us, sir. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.